All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Hannah Crepeau, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Certiport. We're so happy to have you joining us for our fourth Certified Academy Business webinar. Please feel free to drop into the chat. It's been opened up so everyone can connect with each other. Let us know where you're joining from and what courses you teach and the students that you work with. We are very excited to get to know all of you over the next hour together. Now, this session is being recorded, so we ask that if you have any questions that you want to direct toward our presenters, please feel free to drop those into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll make sure to address those before we wrap up this afternoon. We wanted to highlight our sponsor for this session, the Entrepreneurship and Small Business Certification Program. The ESB certification ensures that tomorrow's leaders are prepared with the toolkit they need to get ahead in today's competitive landscape. Whether your students are starting a bakery or launching the next billion-dollar startup, ESB validates a student's understanding of core business principles, including the essentials needed to launch and maintain a successful business. And today, of course, we're so excited because we're diving into the lessons learned from real entrepreneurs. And we have a panel of incredible, what I'm going to call experts. And I'm a little bit biased because these are some of my very close friends, but we're very excited to be able to shine a light on the entrepreneurial experience. First, we have with us Devin Wellington, who is the CEO and founder of Finally Decor, a home decor e-commerce business that aims to provide quality home decor at a fair price. With her husband, David, she also owns 3 franchises of the social etiquette business, teaching over 3,000 6th through 12th graders in the Northern Virginia area. With a master's degree in applied developmental psychology, Devin also has experience as a researcher in the nonprofit space and in education policy for a social and behavioral research firm. Through all her varying interests, Devin has found that her through line is her work in accessibility, whether to information programming or decor. She's also a big believer that there's room at the top for everyone. Second, we have with us Haley Murch, who is a mom of 2 boys and a podcast connoisseur. She helps female entrepreneurs start and manage their podcasts so they can grow their businesses, have a platform for their unique message, and help give them time to create a purpose-filled business for their clients and their own lives. She started her virtual assistant business 4 years ago. At the beginning of 2020, she decided to niche down into podcasting only, and her business doubled even during the pandemic. She saw that working with podcasters was needed and that it wasn't going anywhere. She's worked on over 40 different podcasts, and she is continually amazed with the variety and the value that they bring to their listeners. So we're very excited to have all of you here with us and have these incredible experts. I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing so everyone can see our amazing entrepreneurs. And before we get started, so we'll start, Devin, with you. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your business.
Sure. Yes. My name is Devin Wellington, and I have 2 kids, and I actually really started my business once after I had my kids, because I learned from them how to fail, and it sounds so cliche, but you see little kids and they don't care that they can't do anything. They just keep trying and trying again. And so up until then, I had a real big fear of failure. And so I finally decided to take that and channel it into something that could be useful to people. My home decor business actually started because I was learning from my mother-in-law how to do a garland at Christmas time. She's like really good at Christmas decorations. And I showed her a picture in a magazine, and she just took me to the store and was like, you need 6 of these and 5 of these. And there was a total formula to it. And I was like, okay, truly, if I can do it, anyone can. And so that sort of launched me into this home decor business. We have pivoted quite a bit since, we've been in business doing that for 2 years now. And we've had a lot of lessons learned, and we've pivoted a lot. But that's sort of what started me out, was just sort of wanting to democratize DIY home decor. And we've gone from there.
I love that. And I know we're going to talk about quite a few of those lessons and the pivots that you've made along the way. So thank you for that introduction. That's wonderful. Haley, we'll come to you next. Let's get an intro into you and to your business.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. So I started my business, like you mentioned, about 4.5 years ago now, and have been working with podcasters, and just really found, as I started my podcast business, and I know we might get into this later, but I actually worked with a variety of different things first. I was kind of doing a lot of virtual assistant, YouTube, Pinterest. I was kind of just diving into a lot of different things, seeing what was out there. And niched down to podcasting because it just happened to be a time thing. It's really funny how time works, but just right before the pandemic hit, I realized that, like, oh, like I'm good at this. I enjoy this. There's a market for it. And then once the pandemic hit and people were stuck at home and didn't have much to do in their business except their next step to start a podcast because they couldn't go anywhere, I got really lucky. And then I just kind of happened into this world that honestly now is just continually growing. And I feel really grateful to just kind of be able to work with a variety of different people. So it's been really, really awesome.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to come to you first, Haley, and to talk about your entrepreneurial journey. And let's start from the very beginning. When did you first realize that you wanted to start your own business? What kind of sparked that fire for you?
Yeah. So I hope I don't embarrass Hannah, but I thought about this. Hannah and I have known each other for a really long time. We knew each other back in college, and a few years ago when her and I hadn't seen each other in a long time, we had a phone call catching up. I remember talking to her. She was working from home and I was a young mom. We were both kind of young moms and navigating this world. And I remember kind of in desperation, like telling her, like, I need something, like, like we're young and married, but we're like, my husband's just coming out of a master's program, like we're poor. And like, I think I just had this moment of like, kind of letting it out to a friend, but also like, what do I do about this? Hannah, answer all my life problems and questions right now. And it wasn't till about probably a few years later after that very time, because in between my husband's master's and where we live today, we had another move. We've moved a lot in a short amount of time. It's crazy. Hannah also, I know, understands that. So what pushed me to take this step was honestly, and I say all that background to hopefully be a little bit human to the listeners, is I needed something for my family. I needed something to support them financially. I also, being a new mom of two little boys, I needed something for myself again. And I was just searching for like what that was. And, I had a degree and background in geography, travel, and tourism. But at the time, being a young mom and doing travel and tourism didn't seem like the right fit. I needed something flexible. I needed something from home. And then just a case of talking and networking with people and what were my friends up to? What were they doing? I came across somebody who had a virtual assistant. And like I mentioned, I kind of dived into that world for a little bit to see what that meant and what that looked like. And then came across this world of podcasting. So I think that, and then came to find that there's so many possibilities in this world of entrepreneurship. Like there's so many things we can actually do with the things that we enjoy doing and make it flexible and make it work for our lifestyles that we want. So I think I love
that you touched on the flexibility, but also just the passion side of it, that there's a lot that individuals bring to the table that the business world might not have. And so I think being able to bridge that gap is so important. And I know, Devin, that's kind of part of your journey as well. So tell us about when you first started your business.
So I first started my business. So like Hannah mentioned, we have two. So one is we own 3 franchises of this sort of character development business. We work with teams. And then this other one is this decor business. And so we had been doing this character development program for several years before I started my other one. So I think that was really good for me to sort of get my feet wet. It is a franchise, so there's much more structure to it and things that you have to do, which can be good and bad. And that was really good for me to learn sort of what would be needed, but then also take stock of what I might want to change and do differently on my own. And so it was really just born out of this idea of wanting to bring really high quality goods to everyone, just trying to democratize that home decor experience. And sometimes I still look at myself and I'm like, this is like, I'm not solving world hunger here, and having to be okay with like my business not maybe being the most socially, I don't know the word for it. Do you know what I mean?
Socially impactful. Right?
Yeah. But like there are things I can do in my business that will have some social impact. We would love for one day for all of our products to be recyclable, right? That's going to be a couple years down the line because we're still small potatoes and we're still trying to get manufacturers to work with us who have those capabilities. And we know who they are and we're aware of them, and it was sort of, that's like our benchmark. And so there's things that we can do, but I also believe that people want to like where they live. And so sort of marrying all of those things together.
Yeah. Bringing the passion and also being able to marry that with things that are so important to you and to those that you serve. And I think that along the way, I know both of you have mentioned that you've kind of pivoted, you've changed your business structure, you've changed your business model. So I wanted to talk about the barriers, and then we'll kind of go into the positives of the journey, because it's better to start with the negatives, I think, and then move on to the positives. So Devin, we'll start with you in starting your business. And I know you and your husband have multiple aspects of businesses that you work with, but what was one of the most difficult barriers that you faced when you first got started?
So there's two, the main ones that I would identify. The first one is just logistical. And we sell a product, we sell a good. And one of the reasons I started my business was because I was seeing things out there that if I wanted them, like they were $300. And so I wanted to find something at a better price point that was still high quality. And so that takes a lot of research and development and money to do that. And so that was a big barrier to entry. And this was also during the pandemic. So then there's like this shipping crisis and like this global shortage of artificial blueberries, where like, I didn't know that was a thing, you know? So that was a big one, was the logistics of creating a project or a product. And then the second is also that like more personal, innate fear of like, who am I to do this? And so I really had to learn to reframe that as like, why not me instead of why me? And that's been very, very liberating for me as I've learned to do that.
I like that, being able to say, instead of why me, what do I have to offer, being able to say, why not me? And I think that for our educators who are listening, that's such a powerful message to teach to the learners and students that you work with, that everyone has something that they are passionate about, that a skill that they have that others might not have. And being able to create a business around that type of passion is so powerful. But I know it doesn't come super easily. And I know that, of course, there are barriers that come with that. So Haley, I wanted to touch on your experience as well. What's been the most difficult barrier you've faced as you've started and kind of grown your business?
Yeah, so I think the one that first came to mind was just the initial taking action and putting myself out there was really hard. Probably that first like 6 months to a year. Because although I was taking steps and that felt good, actually being vocal about it, actually talking to people, actually like trying this new training or doing this new thing was all really scary at the very beginning. And I just kept thinking, you know, what the heck am I doing? And where is this going to take? Like, you kind of want all the answers right away, and you want it to fit this ideal that you have, but really it took all of those steps and those lessons learned to really help me pivot, to help me really accelerate in the business. And so like, I think that initially everybody's going to feel a little bit of that, like you're at the edge and like you don't really know what you're doing, but like pushing past that anxiety and like just taking some steps like initially got me to where I am now. And so like I appreciate even the small steps, but looking back, wish I would have done it a little faster. But like, I think that a lot of times we get hung up in our head a lot about all, you know, like she was talking about logistics. Sometimes you do start going through these logistics and things you have to set up, softwares you have to learn, and money going in here and people, and you're just like, this is a lot. But really it just took action upon action upon action. And then it works itself out.
There. Yeah. Well, so you mentioned that you wish you would have learned some of those lessons earlier on. So in thinking about starting your business and what you've learned as you've gone through, what do you wish you'd done differently? If you could go back and speak to yourself when you first started, what would be a lesson that you would share?
I didn't even purposely mean to go into your question.
It worked out super well.
It worked out. I think what I wish I would have done different is just been, you know, it's kind of sad to admit, one thing would be just to be more confident in myself. Like, I can do this, you know, like I have skills, I can learn things, I like to work with people, I like to talk with people. I love what Devin said, why not, you know? And so it's just like, I wish I would have just had a little more confidence at the beginning, instead of having to like grow that, although that I appreciate that learning experience now.
Right.
I think the other thing would be, I still think even though I jumped into it, I wish, even though me and Devin have a very different experience in market, I wish I would have done some more research. I think the research came along as I was going, but I wish I would have like, okay, I know I'm jumping into this like virtual online entrepreneur world. And not till I was in it was I like, whoa, like there's so much out there, good and bad. And so like, I wish I would have kind of explore that a little bit more just to see what I was getting into. And not that I regret it at all. I just think I wish I would have done a little bit more of like seeing what other people were doing and what some of the options were. Instead, I just dove, which is also a very crazy and brave thing to do, but I just dove and then started discovering those things along the way. So I don't regret any of it. I would like to make that clear. I think every journey essentially takes you to where you need to go and lessons need to be learned. But every time you get through that, you look back and you go, dang it. It's like, I wish I would have done that different or known that. And maybe some things could have panned out a little differently, but.
Yeah. But I think to your point, the journey is your own. And I think learning those lessons often wouldn't come in another way. And so I think there's a lot of value that comes with that. But that doesn't mean, of course, that we don't look back and think, oh, I wish I would have done that a little bit differently. So Devin, I wanted to touch on your experience as well. I know that we've had conversations about how you've pivoted and changed your business. What do you wish you would have done differently when you first started?
I mean, I'll say that like we did all the market research and then we still had to pivot quite a bit. So I do think that there's so much value in jumping in and just going, not to say don't do your research, but even, I mean, like you see companies like Apple and they have so many resources and they go out, they do market research and they bring it to market. And then people are like, nah, actually we want it to stay how it was, or nah, actually that's not what we were talking about. And so looking at big companies like that gives me a lot of comfort that we did the same thing. We went out and we did a ton of market research and everyone was like, yes, this is what we want. And then it wasn't. And so my original vision was like, okay, you can get things from really high-end decor stores, places like, you know, Ethan Allen or Ralph Lauren. And then you have your Michaels and your hobby stores and like, let's bridge the gap. Like I will find the high quality supplies and I will teach you how to do it better than what you would find at Michael's, but you're not paying $400 for it, right? So that was the original concept, was like, here is beautiful home decor in a box. And so we did all this market research and everyone was like, yes, I want to make my home. Yes, that would make me so happy to see something I created in my home. Yes, if someone could make this easier for me and source all the things. Yes, yes, yes. Like everyone was like, yes, this sounds great. And then when push came to shove, what we found is that people still got their boxes. And even though we had like written guides and video tutorials, people would look at these materials and be like, it's going to take 40 minutes and never mind.
Yeah.
And so, and then we worked with like DIY influencers who have a big following of people who have a high degree of interest in doing it yourself. And even then it like just didn't pan out. And so what we learned is that people who were going to do that type of thing, we're just going to do it. You know, they didn't necessarily need what we were providing. And so as a fluke, one of the things we had planned on doing was like a Christmas mantle in a box. So like, we'll give you everything you need for a beautiful Christmas mantle. And in this process, I had sourced really beautiful garlands, home decor garlands, and they were one of a kind and we were really proud of them. And then because of the shipping crisis, we got a notice from our manufacturer being like, they're not going to be there on time. So we sent out emails and we're like, we're so sorry. This is so embarrassing. They're not going to be here on time. And then they were, and then they just like happened to get there like November 1st. And we're like, oh, we can sell these. And they sold out, and I'm not joking you, in 8 hours. And we're like, well, we should pay attention to this, you know, like, and so it's not in my nature to go with the flow. And I was like actually really proud of myself in that moment for being like, I need to pay attention to how the market is responding. And so those same garlands, that was 2 years ago. And then this past year, those same garlands sold out 3 different times, and we grew our business by like 5.65 times. Like we grew a ton. And so we're now able to take that momentum and sort of build upon that. And we're really excited about that. But we tried to do everything right, and it still didn't go the way we planned. And so I was really happy to learn, even though it took a little bit of time, to like listen to your market. And that was really valuable for me.
Well, I love that you've talked about some of the lessons that you learned, and I want to dive a little bit more into that later, but you've also talked about some of these amazing benefits of being an entrepreneur. And I think that the structure and workday of an entrepreneur looks very different from someone who works a traditional corporate 9-to-5. So I wanted to talk, and we'll come to you first, Devin, about what are some of the things that you've loved about being an entrepreneur and your journey so far?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Some things I love. I mean, it's an amazing thing to see something that you have created come to life. Like that's an incredible feeling. And I constantly looked at my husband and I'm like, I can't believe strangers are buying this. Like they don't even know me and they're buying it and they like it. Like that's a really cool feeling. And some of the other benefits are that like there is some like I always joke with my friends that I'm like never working and I'm also always working. And so, you know, I've had to be really intentional about setting timeframes up in which I work, but there is some more flexibility in that regard. And I really just loved the process of learning. Like I have felt so personally fulfilled and enlightened in this process that even if it all goes down in flames, like I feel like I will have learned so much and have been so personally edified by the process of it all.
And you've grown so much through the process, right? Seeing something that you've created come to life. I love that. Haley, let's come to you. What has your experience been like? What have you loved about the entrepreneurial journey that you've taken so far?
Yeah, I would tag off of what Devin just said at the end there. I think that one thing I love is the many things I have learned. And I'll be honest, probably the first couple years, I wouldn't have said that because there's a lot of growing pains at the beginning. And so you're questioning a lot of things. But I think now I'm just grateful for the things that it's taught me. I mean, I have learned things about business in general that like I never really knew. And I'm grateful for that because I have a new eye for business, for marketing and how things really work. And it piques my interest even more. I mean, I'm already a very variety person. So like throw one more thing in there that I'm interested in. I'm never gonna have time to do anything. So like, it's just like I really enjoy the things that I have learned. I think the other thing I really enjoy about being an entrepreneur is I am a little bit, liking to control things. And I like that I can set my schedule. I like that I can create what I need to. I mean, even though with podcasting, yes, people have deadlines for when their show comes out and all that. But I have been able to, especially with clients that I've had now for almost some of them for 2 years, 3 years, we've set up a system well enough that we respect each other's time. And so it's like, hey, I need this by then to make it work for my schedule, but I'm getting it to you so that you have it in time. And so we kind of have this mutual, like, your podcast might not be out for a week, but if you give it to me a week early, then it'll be done, and then I can have flexibility as to how I do that. I really enjoy that. I mean, today, the flexibility of being able to be on here, that is also, because my husband works from home, he has a job with a company, but we have that flexibility, which is nice that we can kind of trade off on things we need help with our family and our schedule. And so I appreciate that about being an entrepreneur, that I'm not tied down to someone telling me when I need to be in and out. And so that's been really nice.
Well, it's interesting that you've both talked about the control, but also lack of control that you have as an entrepreneur. And I think that there's a lot of growing pains, as you've mentioned, kind of in that process. And one thing that I'm hoping that we can accomplish with this session is to help educators be able to empower their students who have that entrepreneurial spirit, be able to kind of learn some of those lessons before they dive in, right? I think everyone wants to be able to learn from the experiences of others. So Haley, we'll come to you first in thinking about what are some of the main lessons, maybe just 2 that you've learned that you would share with future entrepreneurs, whether students or those who are kind of looking to dive in to start their own business?
Yeah, of course. So I think two of the biggest lessons, one of them would be done is better than perfect. And maybe that's part of my diving into it mentality. But it can be as small as, when I first started, I did a program that taught me, kind of how to get my virtual assistant business started. I needed to, buy a domain. I needed to start a website, and it walked me through all these steps, which I am so grateful for. But the thing that I would get hung up on is like, I'm building my website and I want it to look perfect. And I remember hearing over and over, done is better than perfect. Like, it looked good, but to my standard, I wanted it here. And it was like, you know what, it's doing what it's supposed to, publish it. So it's that momentum of like, okay, like I've got something here. It's like when they tell you to post, post this many times or whatever. And it's like, I don't know what to post, or I don't know what to say. It's like, post what you're doing today for your business. Post, what my podcasters, I always advise them, like, do it behind the scenes, like, show us your studio, where are you recording, like, do something, show them what you're doing. So it's just taking those small leaps. And then I think the other thing that I have learned and really has helped me, not just as a business owner and entrepreneur, but as a person, is that we're kind of capable of anything we put our mind to. If you just tell yourself, that word manifest is really big, but out there, but like, I think when you manifest, I need to make this amount of money. I need to, I want to go on this vacation with my family. I want to pay off our school debt. I want to do these things. How am I going to do that? When you manifest and you figure out why you're doing something, and then you really start doing it by taking those action steps, you can do it. And I think a lot of times we're human, and we get in our head and we get scared of things, and we think things aren't possible, but really they are. And I'm grateful for that.
I love that. Being able to see what you want as kind of your end vision, but then also being flexible with the process, right? To your point, done is better than perfect. It's easy to see the end goal and to think, oh, I'm never going to be able to do that. But taking those small baby steps along the way, I think that's so crucial. Devin, let's come to you next. What are some of the lessons that you would share with students who want to be entrepreneurs someday?
Well, just real quick to speak to Haley's point, I had someone that I was talking to who's grown a very, very multi-million-dollar successful business. And he was saying, in our business, we do B- work. And that was shocking to me, because B- is like nowhere near what I'm comfortable with, And he said, your B- is going to be better than someone else's B- who has no clue what your business is, right? Your B- might be someone else's A+ work when they don't have your same level of experience, and your B- will continue that, your threshold for what that is will continue to get better. And that has been so liberating for me, because when I was in high school, if you would have said do B- work, I would have been appalled at that suggestion, And when we have research, we have studies about kids in coding, especially girls in the STEM field, who don't turn in their work unless it's perfect. And so the done is better than perfect, or that B- work mentality, I think is fantastic. To add on to that, I would have loved to have learned how to fail. When I was younger, I would not try out for a team if I didn't think I was going to make it, like really pretty sure. I don't recommend this, but I only applied to one college. Like, I knew what my scores needed to be and my GPA, and I knew that I was going to get in. I saw the little matrix and I was like, I'm in. And luckily I got in. Can you imagine if I didn't? And so I didn't even try for things that I was afraid that I might not get. And I look back and I think about like sort of how sad that is, and how much I might have missed out on, how many experiences I might have had if I just would have been able to have fun with things instead of putting so much pressure on myself to be successful at something. So that's my first one, is to be comfortable with failure. I wish I would have had perhaps teachers or mentors push me in that regard. The second thing would be grit. I think that goes hand in hand. I've been thinking a lot about grit these past couple of years, as you can imagine. And again, I didn't used to really need grit in a sense, well, because I was only doing things I really wanted to do and I felt like I was already good at. The grit part came a lot easier. I could work hard at it, but it wasn't such a slog sometimes. And now, because there's so many facets of business and entrepreneurship, I like have had to be really, really gritty, and I want my kids to be gritty. And so whenever I feel sort of discouraged, I think like about the person that I am becoming for them, who they're seeing, what I can model for them. And that is a really big driver for me. But I would say, yeah, grit and failure together.
And those are to your point, I think those are hard lessons, especially for these exceptional students that a lot of our educators are working with, that if you're a perfectionist, it can be very hard to approach the entrepreneurship world optimistically, because you just think if I'm going to fail someday, it's better to just not do it. But there's so many lessons, so much growth that comes along the way, that I hope we can kind of keep that entrepreneurial fire going. And so in thinking about those who are here for this session, our educators that are listening, what lessons would you share with them? How can they keep that entrepreneurial spirit alive for their students? And Devin, will come to you first.
Sure. Yeah, I have feelings about this because I remember like the first time that someone told me I couldn't do something. Like I remember that very clearly. I was 8 years old and I lived in Northern California, and Stanford was the big school. And I told someone I wanted to go to Stanford, and they said, that's not going to happen. And I like look back at that and I'm like so mad at that person, you know, because like, how dare you? And so I think there's this component of like, yes, you can do it, and it can be hard work, and you will have to have grit, and you will have to fail, but like you can get there. And then, you know, so I think that there's some of that, but I think there's also a lot of value in identifying the strengths that you see in someone. I remember the first time someone told me, you're an entrepreneur. And it took me a minute to like settle in with that word, because previous to that, I had only heard it from like guys in college. And I was like, you're not an, like, what does that mean that you're an entrepreneur, you know? And so really like taking ownership of that word, it took me a minute. But she was like, I think you need someone to tell you you have an entrepreneurial spirit, and not everyone does. And so I want you to recognize that. And that was really, really powerful for me to have someone sort of speak that to me and recognize those strengths was really great for me.
Well, and going back to Haley's point earlier, recognizing and kind of manifesting that into the world, right? Like students really need to hear this is something that you're good at, because I look back on the things that I thought about myself when I was in high school and early college, and it's just not necessarily an accurate representation of who you are as a person. So having someone recognize those strengths in you, I think that that's super powerful. And Haley, I'm sure you'll echo those same words, but I also wanted to give you a chance to share what do you wish teachers would have done for you, or what do you think teachers can do to help spark that entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, I think Devin and I are on the same page on a lot of this, because I feel like, you know, that they can do anything spirit really helps them. I wish I would have heard that more. I don't think that I had bad teachers or that I had bad mentors or anything. I wish I would have heard more that I could do it versus that I can't. Kind of like she said, I felt like I heard more of like, that's not good enough. You're not up to that level. And like, instead of like the things I was doing good. But I also like how she said, finding the strengths in what they already can do. One time someone gave me some great advice when I was kind of stuck on some things I wanted to do, you know, like, oh, I don't know which path to take, and I'm trying all these things. And they're like, you should like kind of survey your close friends and family, like ask them what things would they come to you for, and you know, what would they, if you had to ask Haley one advice, what's the thing that they would come to you for? And you kind of get this interesting insight into what your skills are and things that you're good at. And that would help students kind of see like, what do you already have that you can like, you know, keep working on, or that you have a good skill, because sometimes I don't think we see those kinds of things in ourselves. And I think the other thing is just the world is so big for opportunity. I mean, I think I knew that. I grew up in a very small town in Arkansas, like probably as you imagine it. And I graduated in a class of like 120 kids or less. I don't even remember. And it was very small, but I was definitely like, I'm like a Hallmark movie. Like I'm the girl from the small town that goes to the big city. And I'm like, whoa, like, look at all this, right? And sorry, take the romantic part out of a Hallmark. I'm not but like My life, I felt like I was like, oh, there's so much out here. And once I'm
Mhm.
so grateful I got to go to a school out of my state and I got this experience to really see a lot of just the world. And I am so grateful for that. But I think I didn't even realize then, even in college, like there's so many things that I could do. And I actually heard this recently editing a podcast that somebody said everything that we use in our day, in our life, somebody had the momentum and the idea, that thing you're using, my mic I'm using, my computer, the clothes I'm wearing. So when you think about that, you get a little overwhelmed, but then you go, there's a lot of amazing people in this world, and there's a lot of things happening because people took action. And so I think if you can give that fire to a student of like, you can do this and there's a lot of ways to do it, then I think that I wish I would have heard that more, I guess.
I love that. And that kind of brought me back to just reading your bio earlier, Devin, that there's room at the top for everyone. Everyone has a different almost silo of interest. And so people think, well, that already exists, but no one's going to approach it in the same way that you do. And so I think that having students hear that early on and being able to share that with them, that just because someone's doing something similar doesn't mean that what you're bringing to the table isn't valuable. And so I love that you've all shared kind of your experience in this journey. And I think that it's so powerful for students to be able to see what success looks like. And it's different for everyone. Not everyone's entrepreneurial journey is going to be the same. So I really appreciate both of you sharing your journeys and being so open and honest with that. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to see, Haley, will come back to you and Devin as well. If you had any final thoughts that you wanted to share, anything else about the entrepreneurial journey that you wanted to make sure that we covered.
Yeah, so I think just the two things I would end with. One is you kind of asked this question, but in my notes, because you sent us these questions, one thing that you asked specifically was what we wish we'd learned while we were in school. And I was just talking to my husband about this today. We actually, it's a beautiful day here in the Midwest, and we went on a walk outside in February. It was weird, but we went for a walk and we were talking about kind of like what education is like now and what it'll be like in 10 years when our kids are graduating. That ages me a little bit, telling you how old my kids might be. But anyways, so I realized I was like, I wish I would have learned in school how to communicate with, like, in the professional environment. I wish I would have learned how to network properly. I wish I would have learned some basic business skills. I wish that would have been an opportunity. Like I said, I went to a small school. Maybe we just didn't have it and not everybody else did. But like, I wish there would have been a realistic approach to some things. I feel like some things were very by the book and here's your assignment and do this. I'm like, I wish I would have got a little bit more real world, even in college, I would say, just to be able to see what opportunities were out there. So I just wanted to say that before we ended. And then I just would say the last thing about just being an entrepreneur and that journey and what that can look like for anybody. Like you said, it's so different for everybody. I think that's been probably the funnest part of working with so many different kinds of people. I mean, it's unique that I work with podcasters and I have chosen to primarily work with females, but everybody is at a different business. And I've just learned so much. And I think there's just a spice to life when you get to get a variety of different people and cultures and experiences. And so I think that, you know, being an entrepreneur, you have to put yourself out there. And so you get this opportunity to just be around and meet amazing people. And so I've been really grateful for that. And then the crazy learning experience, as we've discussed. So I'm grateful for it, but just prepare that it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Grateful for the journey, but be prepared that it's going to be a little bit different, I think, than we all envision, right? I really like that. Devin, any final thoughts from you?
Sorry, yes. Just thinking about educators and the population that they're working with, I think I wish I would have been encouraged to be more honest with myself about what I actually am good at. I know there's like 1,000 different sort of personality assessment things like that out there that you can do. But I remember, especially early, right out of college, I was getting jobs and it was like, everyone wants a junior employee to be detail oriented, right? And that's a good thing to be. I'm not saying that it's not, but that's not where I thrive personally. I thrive at this macro level and sort of more big picture thinking. And I felt like I wasn't allowed to be good at that until I earned it. And instead of viewing that as like some sort of like inherent just talent, you know what I mean? Like we all have different talents and things like that. And so I think I wish I would have leaned into and been more honest with myself about what my strengths were, and also comfortable saying, and if something's a weakness of mine, then great, there's going to be someone else out there who's good at that thing. And I don't have to be good at everything. I can just be good at the things that I'm good at and focus on those. So I think that's something I wish I had learned a little earlier on.
Well, it goes back to your point that you shared earlier, that you have to recognize your strengths, but also I think a huge part of the entrepreneurial journey is learning to recognize what weaknesses you have and being able to bring people into the circle that can help you do that. Because learning how to run a business, there's no way, right, that you're going to be able to do everything. So being able to bring people in to network, to Haley's point earlier, it's so important to be able to make those connections and those relationships, because a business isn't just one person. Ultimately, you're going to need to be able to bring more people into the fold. So I think that that's wonderful advice. I just wanted to, before we close, thank our incredible guests and thank you for the experiences that you've shared with us, and also just make a couple short announcements. Next week, of course, we'll be hosting another session about establishing career pathways. So in thinking about these students that you work with, maybe they are super passionate about becoming entrepreneurs, but they don't have the skill set that they need, or maybe they have interests in different fields. We want to be able to make sure that you have the resources you need to help show them what they need to do to get to their career of their choosing. So next week, we're going to be tackling that subject at the macro level. And we have some incredible guests who are going to be joining us to talk about resources that you can leverage to bring that into your classroom. I also just wanted to emphasize that as part of this Certified Academy experience, you also have the opportunity to add on our boot camp, which means that you'll be able to test out these certification programs and see if they work for you and the students that you work with. So if you're not part of our boot camp yet and you're interested in adding that on, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm just going to go ahead and drop my email here into the chat. It's hannah.davis@pearson.com. And we would love to have you connect with us. These resources are meant to be for you, to help you create this rich classroom experience for your students. So thank you, Haley and Devin and everyone who's been with us today. We really appreciate you, and we hope to see you all with us next week. Thanks, everyone.